My name is Marcus. I am 34 years old. And this is the hole in the ground where Rome decided to build something impossible. 60,000 tons of stone, no engines, no machines, just men, ropes, and the kind of stubbornness only an emperor can afford. How did we build the Colosseum with bare hands? The year is 72, and the Emperor Vespasian wants a gift for Rome. Not gold, not grain. He wants a building so large that every citizen across the empire will hear about it before they ever see it. And he wants it built on top of the lake. The private lake that Nero stole from the people of Rome to decorate his golden house. A palace so indecent that it turned the entire city against him. That is where I come in. I am a redemptor, a building contractor. I am the man who stands between the architect who draws the beautiful lines on wax tablets and the men who carry the stone on their backs until their spines curve permanently. On the first morning I walk the site, I stand in mud up to my shins. The Stagnum Neronis is still half full of stagnant water. Green scum lapping at the edges of what was once a private paradise for a man the Senate was happy to forget. An engineer from the Tiber Drainage Corps kneels in the muck beside me and tells me the lake bed sits on volcanic clay. Good for sealing, bad for foundations. I nod like I already knew that. I did not. The first job is not building. The first job is emptying. We dig drainage channels from the lake bed to the river Tiber. 8 channels, each one wide enough for 2 ox carts to pass. The earth comes out black and stinking, and thick with the rotting remains of Nero's ornamental fish. 600 men work these trenches through the summer. Most of them are captives from Judea. Young men who fought against Titus in Jerusalem and lost everything they had. I do not know their names. I know their output. 40 baskets of silt per man per day. It takes 5 months to drain that lake. 5 months of hauling buckets of black slime while senators ride past on the Via Sacra above us and complain about the smell. 5 months before a single stone is laid. When the valley is finally dry, the real terror begins. The architects hand me a plan drawn on wax tablets. 4 stories, 80 arched entrances arranged in a perfect ring. Seating for 50,000 citizens and standing room for another 10,000. I look at the plan and I look at the cracked mud beneath my feet. And I think to myself, this ground will never hold that weight. But you do not say that to an emperor. You say yes, and you pray to whatever gods are still listening. The stone comes from Tivoli, from the Barco quarry, 20 miles east of Rome along the old road. Travertine, a limestone the color of warm honey when it is cut wet from the earth, turning white as bone when it dries under the Italian sun. Each block weighs between 5 and 20 tons, depending on where it sits in the structure. The Via Tiburtina becomes a highway of suffering. Day and night, ox wagons grind along the road, carrying loads so heavy that the wooden axles bend and crack under the strain. One wagon overturns outside the Esquiline gate and crushes the lead ox flat beneath it. The driver walks away. The animal does not. The stone is undamaged. A new ox is harnessed by morning, and the wagon moves on. I learn early that in this project, stone matters more than anything that breathes, including me. The foundation is a ring of concrete 13 meters deep. We pour it into timber forms, mixing volcanic ash from the quarries at Pozzuoli with lime and broken rubble until it sets harder than the stone it supports. The men work in rotating shifts, 12 hours on, 12 hours in the labor camp behind the Colosseum hill, where they sleep on straw mats and eat barley porridge. I sleep in a small room above a wine shop near the Meta Sudan's fountain. The tall cone-shaped monument where the construction workers wash the chalk dust from their eyes at the end of every shift. My wife Livia sends me letters from our home in Ostia asking when I will come back. I write back saying the building is not finished yet. She writes back that neither is our marriage. I laugh when I read that letter. It is the only honest thing anyone says to me all year. By the second year, the outer wall begins to rise from the foundation ring. The travertine pillars are lifted into position by treadwheel cranes. Great wooden wheels 3 meters across, with men walking inside them like caged animals on an endless stair. Each step of their feet raises the block 1 hand's width closer to the sky. The men do not stop walking until the foreman shouts. I watch a crane crew lift a 20-ton keystone block up to the second tier in a single morning. Sweat running off their backs in sheets. Not one of them is older than 25. When the block finally settles into its iron clamps, with a sound like a heavy door closing for the last time, the foreman claps his hands once, and the crew walks back down the ramp to fetch the next one. No celebration, no pause, no rest. There are 300,000 blocks to set in the structure. That was only one. The arches are the genius of the thing, the design that makes all of it possible. 80 arches on each level, radiating outward like the spokes of a great wheel. Each arch distributes the weight of the tier above it down through the pillars to the foundation ring below. The architect explains the principle to me one evening using pebbles arranged on a table in his quarters. Push one pebble, and if the arch geometry is correct, none of the other pebbles move. If the arch is wrong, they all fall. Every single one. I do not sleep well for a week after that conversation. We use 3 different materials for 3 different structural jobs. Travertine for the load-bearing skeleton of pillars and arches. Tuff, the soft volcanic stone, for the inner walls and dividers. Brick-faced concrete for the vaults and the miles of internal corridors. Each material has its own crew of specialists. Each crew has its own foreman who answers to no one except me. I carry a wax tablet everywhere I go on that site. Names, quantities, deadlines, problems. The tablet is my entire world, reduced to numbers scratched in beeswax. By the 4th year, the building is tall enough to cast a shadow that stretches across the entire valley floor from noon until sunset. Scaffolding rises along the outer wall like a second skin made of timber poles lashed together with coarse rope, swaying and creaking in every gust of wind. A man named Cassius falls from the 3rd-tier scaffolding during a rainstorm in October. He lands on the rubble pile below and does not move again. The body is carried away on a stretcher made from planks. The scaffolding is repaired by the next morning. Work resumes before the rain has washed his marks from the stones. I do not write his name in my tablet. I should have. I think about that still. In the 5th year, Vespasian dies of a fever. His son Titus inherits the throne, and the project and the pressure on every man involved doubles overnight. Titus wants the arena completed in time for the inaugural games. He wants the world to see what Rome can accomplish when it puts its mind to building instead of burning. We work through the entire winter, torches burning along the scaffolding every night, turning the construction site into something that looks from a distance like a city on fire. The people who live nearby complain about the noise. The workers do not care. They cannot afford to care. The velarium is the last great engineering challenge of the project. A retractable canvas awning designed to stretch across the open roof and shade 50,000 spectators from the summer sun. Titus brings 1,000 sailors from the imperial fleet stationed at Misenum to rig the ropes and pulleys. They are the only men in Rome with the skill to handle heavy canvas at that enormous scale. I watch them work from the top of the 4th tier, and I realize that I have been thinking of this building as stone and concrete for 8 years. But it is also rope and canvas and the movement of the wind. It is everything at once. The underground level is built last. A network of tunnels, storage cells, and mechanical lifting platforms hidden beneath the arena floor. Wooden platforms mounted on pulleys and counterweights that can raise a caged lion or a condemned gladiator through a trapdoor directly into the sunlight above. The Ludus Magnus, the great gladiatorial training school next door, is connected to the arena by a tunnel that runs directly under the street, so the fighters never have to walk through the public crowds. I walk through that tunnel before it is finished, my footsteps echoing off the damp walls. And I think about the men who will walk this same passage after me. They will not be walking to build something. They will be walking toward the sand and the roar of the crowd, and the certainty that not everyone walks back. And then, one morning, in the spring of the 8th year, it is finished. I stand alone at the top of the 4th tier before dawn, waiting for the sun to come up over the Celian hill to the east. The seats stretch below me in a perfect oval bowl, honey-colored travertine glowing warm in the first gray light. 80 arches on every level, identical, each one supporting the weight of the one above, exactly as the architect promised with his pebbles on a table. And I think about the lake that was here 8 years ago. The green, stagnant water, the mud that sucked at our ankles, the senators on their horses complaining about the smell while we worked. That lake is gone forever. And in its place stands the largest building the world has ever seen. I do not build things for glory. I have never pretended otherwise. I build them because someone has to count the blocks and verify the numbers and make sure the iron clamps sit true. But standing here in this sunrise, watching the light move down the travertine tier by tier, I feel something I did not expect and cannot explain. Every single stone in this building passed through the hands of a real person. Every joint was dressed and set by a man who woke up before the sun and worked until his fingers cracked and bled. Some of those men were free citizens earning a wage. Some of them were captives who never chose to be here. Some of them are still alive and will watch the games from the cheap seats at the top. Some of them are mixed into the rubble fill beneath the seats where the crowds will sit and cheer. The inaugural games last 100 days. Titus floods the arena floor with water from the new aqueduct for a mock naval battle on the first afternoon. 5,000 animals are killed in a single day of hunting spectacles. The crowd roars so loud you can hear it from the steps of the forum. I watch from the top tier with my wife Livia, who finally agreed to come up from Ostia. She takes my arm and says nothing for a very long time. Then she says, "It is beautiful." And I say, "Yes, it is." And I do not tell her about Cassius falling from the scaffolding, or the mud, or the oxen that were crushed under the wagons, or the nights when I lay awake, convinced the arches would crack and the whole thing would come down on top of us. I just say, "Yes, it is beautiful." The Colosseum will stand for 2,000 years. It will survive earthquakes that level entire neighborhoods, fires that gut the wooden seating, and an empire that slowly forgets how to maintain the things it built. Medieval builders will strip the marble facing from the outer walls because they need the material for churches and palaces, and do not care where it came from. Half the outer wall will collapse in a massive earthquake in 1349, and no one alive at the time will have the knowledge or the resources to rebuild it. For centuries, the ruin will serve as a quarry for building stone, a fortress for warring Roman families, a shelter for squatters, and a garden for wild plants that grow nowhere else in the city. By 1855, botanists will catalogue 750 different species of flora growing inside the walls. Seeds carried to Rome in the fur and stomachs of exotic animals shipped from Africa and Asia to die in the arena 2,000 years before. And yet the arches hold. The foundation ring I worried would sink into the volcanic mud sits exactly where we poured it. 13 meters of Roman concrete mixed with Pozzuoli ash that has not shifted by a single finger's width in 20 centuries. Today, more than 6 million people visit the Colosseum every single year. They photograph the arches from outside on the Via dei Fori Imperiali, and they walk through the tunnels underneath the arena floor, and they try to imagine what it all looked like when it was new. They cannot, because what it looked like when it was new was not a ruin full of tour groups and selfie sticks. It was a construction site, with limestone dust hanging in the air and iron clamp marks fresh on every block, and a building contractor who had not slept properly in 8 years. If you visit the Colosseum today and you stand beneath the arches on the second tier, the ones that still carry their original travertine facing, run your hand along the surface of the stone. You will feel small rectangular marks cut into the rock where the iron clamps were set 2,000 years ago. Those clamps were placed by men who stood on timber scaffolding 60 feet above the valley floor, with nothing between them and the ground but their trust in the carpenter who built the platform beneath their feet. Their names are not recorded anywhere. Their faces are not carved into any monument. But their work is still standing. If this story made you feel something real about the people who built the things we walk past every day without thinking, subscribe to this channel. Every episode puts you inside a moment in history through the eyes of someone who was actually there. Hit subscribe so you never miss one. My name is Marcus. I built the Colosseum, and it is still